And for the next section, I want to talk about installation and device connections. Now what we're really doing in the EES Best Practices is taking field learnings and understanding and viewing what's going on with installations. Again, remember, EES systems are monitored, and EES has a very close relationship to all those installations that happen in the field. So it's a great opportunity for us to learn from what you're doing in the field and then help you to get a smooth process for the installation. And so with device connections, we've learned from the field there's been some cases perhaps where the connections haven't been completed 100% of the time. So we want to make sure that those are working for you. And I'll take you through some slides, and then what I'll do is I'll take you over to the product and we'll have a closer look at those. So during your installation, you want to check your connections at all the plugs and sockets. So the initial one, like the product here behind me on the IQ Battery 5, is that the DC connections into the battery are seated correctly. So when microinverters in the IQ battery systems are shipped, they do not maintain a connection to the battery. And so it's required when you install a device that you do actually plug in the DC leads into the microinverter socket in the EES system to ensure that the device can operate. Now that's probably a fairly obvious requirement, but as you do that, you must ensure that there's a click and a solid connection of those DC leads into the connection points. So there's a connection lead for the positive conductor for the battery. There's also a negative conductor lead for the DC battery connection. And those sockets are B1 and B2, should be fairly easy to remember. So again, that's something that we picked up in the field. It has, we found that some of the seating may not have been completed correctly, so please look out for that with those installations. And here for that click as it goes into place. So when you've completed your battery installation, you'll plug in the DC circuits as follows, and before powering up the system, plug the battery DC leads in, plug the battery switch, and you'll fit off the front cover. Now when you fit off the front cover, you're going to also notice that there's a plug on the front cover itself. So this is for the battery power button, which is on the front of the cover. This must be plugged into the CS1 port inside the battery wiring section. Now with cable management, you can use cable ties to affix the cables and support those within the product itself. Now when you're servicing or adding batteries to a site, servicing or even maybe replacing batteries, you will turn off all the battery circuits. Your battery circuit switches will be off, your circuit breakers will be off, and then you'll unplug the B1 and B2 connectors if the battery for any reason needed to be moved on site. So that means it's fully depowered before shifting it. So what I want to do now is I'm going to switch to a closer view. I'm just going to walk up to the battery with a closer camera and we'll have a closer look at that. So I'm standing here with a camera, and I just want to take you up to the front of the battery, and you can see the terminations here on the battery. You can see that the DC leads are firmly connected in the battery itself, and we want to make sure and give them a good pull to make sure that those connectors are correctly fitted on the battery. Now that's got a clipping mechanism, so just ensure when those connectors go in that they're properly seated, and you can hear those clicks click in as it goes into place, and just double check those connections there. Now just to the left of the DC connections, B1 and B2, there is the CS1 connection. Now here is the socket for the cover. Now with the cover itself, that cover will be going onto the battery itself, and I'll just hold that up in front of the phone, and you'll notice that there's a lead that must be connected in. So something that's really important to think about as you're mounting the cover is that that lead doesn't sit proud of the housing and get caught on the seal around the edge of the battery product. So look out for that cable, ensure that that's correctly seated and avoiding any compression on the lip of the battery cover when you're mounting. Now the purpose of that cover, of course, with that lead on is that you've got a, once that's installed, we'll look at the next battery there, you'll see that the operation light of the battery is what's being powered by that lead in the back. And so that is the, turns the battery on and it turns the battery off from the front cover of the battery. So just ensure that that's all properly seated and fitted off correctly. Now once you finish those wiring connections and have completed your AC wiring into the battery terminals, which are here just above, you can see here I'm just pointing to the battery terminals. These 30mm allow 30mm connections on each of the screw terminals for the AC wiring. And then just above here, you've got the communications wiring for the battery communications cable. Now, as you bring the wiring into the battery, that can be brought in surface mount through the side entry. You'll see in here there's a cutout, or it might go through the wall cavity, through the aperture at the on the left-hand side of the battery, or you might fit the wiring off to the right-hand side of the battery there internally. Once that wiring is fitted off, you'll place the dead front cover back on, and then that will be fitted and placed on the front of the battery like so. So back again, I hope that was clear to see there. Just take you through to the next section where I want to just touch on quickly about the IQ system controller and wiring at this system controller. It's actually it's another small thing that's been missed in installations, and we want to make sure that the USB connection, which is shipped unplugged, is plugged into the system controller during installation as well. So that's easily missed. So what I want to do is just highlight for you, zoom in for you again, and just quickly show you that. But this time I think we'll just make that screen a bit larger for you so we can see a bit more. So here I am in front of the system controller, and you can see at the top of the controller here, there is a USB lead which just sits inside the controller ready for connection. There's actually a little sticker now just added in here, say insert into USB here. So once that's connected in, that cable will be ready to power up the system controller. Just get that USB in the right way. And that will be part of your commissioning process, is plugging that USB in. Now again, sometimes it's the small things that can catch people out. So just look out for that connection there as you install. So again, in summary, ensure that the DC plugs are correctly seated on the IQ Battery 5P. Also check at the system controller that you've got the USB cable plugged in at the system controller. Of course, that goes in addition to all the wiring and connections and correctly seated and fitted off within the product itself.